Hey everyone, and welcome back. Ready to dive into something, well, a little different today.
Different is putting it mildly, right?
Today we're ditching the wallets, forgetting about those bank balances, because we're tackling a world without money.
A world without that familiar jingle in your pocket, those online transactions, even that crumpled dollar bill. It's a wild thought experiment.
It really is.
Yeah.
I mean, money, it's so ingrained in how we think about value, about success even, that it's almost impossible to imagine life without it. But that's what we're doing in this deep dive.
Buckle up, because we're going deep into uncharted territory. No economic textbooks, no financial forecasts, just pure speculation and a whole lot of what-ifs.
Exactly. And we've got a ton of fascinating research, historical anecdotes, even some philosophical takes to guide our exploration.
It's going to be a wild ride.
So first things first, let's imagine a world where money never even existed. How would we trade? Would we just revert back to a simple barter system? Like, I'm a writer, right? So in this moneyless world, I'd be trading stories for groceries, I guess.
You've hit on the classic solution barter. It's the OG economic system, trading goods and services directly.
Right. Sounds simple enough.
Until you're that baker with a mountain of sourdough, but your oven breaks down.
Yeah.
Suddenly, you're desperately searching for a mechanic who's craving carbs. That's the big snag with bartering this double coincidence of wants.
So it's not as easy as just having something someone else wants. They need to want what you have, and you need to want what they have, all at the same time.
Exactly. It gets even trickier when you think about valuing those goods and services. How many loaves of bread equal a new pair of shoes? What about something like a haircut or a medical consultation? Trying to establish those equivalences across a society would be incredibly complex.
It'd be total chaos, wouldn't it? I can just imagine trying to haggle over a haircut with a sheep like some bizarre scene from history.
Well, you've just reminded us that some ancient civilizations actually did use things like livestock as a form of commodity money.
Right. Instead of carrying around bags of grain, they'd use something durable, divisible, and agreed upon as a medium of exchange, like salt or shells.
It wasn't perfect, but it was a step beyond pure bartering towards a more standardized system.
Interesting. So even before the invention of coins and bills, societies were grappling with these challenges of trade and finding ways to make it work. But let's just say we could somehow figure out this whole bartering thing on a global scale. How would a world without money, without that constant drive for profit, actually function as a society? Would it be a utopia?
Now, that is the million-dollar question, or rather the no-dollar question.
Would we even have billionaires in a world without money?
It's hard to hoard wealth when there's no physical currency or stock market to manipulate. So in that sense, a world without money could potentially be a more equitable one, at least on the surface.
Okay, so no billionaires. I like the sound of that. But wouldn't other forms of power just emerge? What's to stop someone from controlling all the farmland, for example, and holding it over everyone's heads?
You raise a crucial point. The absence of money doesn't magically erase the human instinct for power or the potential for exploitation. The question becomes, what form would those power structures take?
It really makes you think, what would we value if money wasn't the driving force? Would it be knowledge, skills, access to essential resources?
Would we see a return to a more localized, community-driven way of life? Or would new hierarchies emerge based on entirely different criteria?
It's definitely a thought-provoking concept. We might eliminate some problems, but others would inevitably pop up, just in different forms. It's human nature, isn't it?
But that's what makes exploring this idea so fascinating.
Okay, so we've tackled the basics of trade and the potential societal shifts in a moneyless world. But what about progress? Would we all be stuck in a pre-industrial era without the economic incentives of wages and profits?
It's a question that has fueled countless debates. Would we still see the same drive for innovation without that financial incentive? I mean, it's hard to picture a world without, say, smartphones.
Yeah, would Steve Jobs have been as motivated if a lifetime supply of apples was all he got for creating the iPhone?
Right. The profit motive, for better or for worse, has been a huge driver of technological advancement as we know it. But here's where things get really interesting. What if, instead of hindering progress, a moneyless world actually pushed us towards a different kind of progress altogether?
Different how? You mean like going back to horse and buggy?
Not necessarily. Think about it. What if, without the pressure of profits, innovation became more about collaboration, about sharing knowledge for the common good?
Interesting. You know, there are already examples of that happening today, even within our money-driven world.
Give me an example.
Well, Look at the open source software movement. You have brilliant minds from all over, collaborating on these incredibly complex projects, sharing their code freely, all without the expectation of getting rich off it.
Exactly. That's what I'm talking about. The desire to create, to contribute to something bigger than yourself, it can be incredibly powerful.
And it's not just a fringe movement either. I mean, a huge chunk of the internet runs on Linux, and that's open source.
Precisely. So it's not this far-fetched idea, it's already happening. Now imagine if that model, that spirit of collaboration, was applied to all areas of innovation.
So instead of companies racing to patent the next big thing, you'd have global communities working together to solve problems to advance technology for everyone.
And it's not limited to the digital world either. Think about community gardens, people sharing their knowledge of agriculture, growing food together, or those tool libraries where you can borrow instead of everyone buying the same equipment. It's all about sharing resources for the benefit of the community.
You know, you're right. We already engage in these microcosms of a moneyless economy in so many ways, and we don't even realize it. It's more about cooperation and less about, well, profit margins.
Exactly. Now, I'm not saying it would be easy to scale that up to a global level. There would be challenges for sure. But it does make you question whether a world without money would necessarily be a world devoid of progress.
Right, maybe progress would just look a whole lot different. It's a fascinating concept. But let's get real for a second. We've been talking about big picture stuff like the global economy and space-age technology. But what about the everyday stuff? How would we handle something like, let's say, education in a world without those lovely tuition fees? Would it be all about bartering your knowledge for a basket of tomatoes?
Picture this, a rural community in this moneyless world. A seasoned farmer, he's passing on generations of knowledge to the younger generation, teaching them the art of, say, sustainable farming in exchange for, perhaps, help during harvest season or assistance with building a new barn.
So instead of paying tuition, you're paying your dues through actual hands-on contribution to the community. You're literally learning by doing.
Precisely. And that carpenter we talked about earlier, he could be sharing his craftsmanship with apprentices, and in return, he receives food, clothing, those essential goods.
But what about more specialized skills? Like, would you travel across the country to find someone who can teach you, I don't know, astrophysics in exchange for some basket weaving lessons?
It does make you wonder, doesn't it? It's likely that education in this world would become a lot more localized, more community-focused.
Knowledge sharing as a core value? It's an interesting concept. Makes you rethink those overdue library books.
It really does make you question, doesn't it, the way we value and exchange knowledge in our current system. But let's not forget about the fun stuff. What about entertainment? Would we be stuck with just storytelling around a campfire? Or could we still enjoy a good movie or a concert in a world without those pricey tickets?
I can just imagine it now, walking into a concert hall and instead of flashing a ticket, you're like, hey, I baked you this delicious loaf of sourdough bread. Can I get in?
Well, payment in kind. It does paint a rather charming picture, doesn't it? Imagine a world where entertainment isn't this commercialized industry, but a more integral part of the community.
Right, like going back to a time of local musicians playing in the village square, their payment for, I don't know, a meal or a warm place to sleep.
Exactly. And it wouldn't just be about passively consuming either. Imagine being part of the entertainment itself, contributing to the experience.
So instead of buying a ticket to a play, you're helping build the set, or maybe you're even part of the chorus.
Precisely. Entertainment becomes this reciprocal act, strengthening those community bonds in the process.
It really makes you realize how much our current entertainment industry revolves around transactions, doesn't it? But it does make you wonder, in this world without the mega deals and the Grammys, would we still see the same drive to, reach the very top of your field? Would we even have professional athletes or world-renowned musicians without those big paychecks and awards?
It's an intriguing question, isn't it? It forces us to examine the nature of ambition and achievement. Would that desire for recognition, for mastery, would it still exist without the financial rewards?
It makes you think maybe in a way those pursuits would be considered even more pure, more about the love of the craft and less about the zeros on the paycheck.
It's a different definition of success, that's for sure. And maybe, just maybe, in a world less fixated on wealth and status, true fulfillment might be found in mastery, in contribution, in the respect of your peers.
It's certainly a different way of looking at things.
And that, I think, is the heart of this whole thought experiment. It's not about saying one system is inherently better than the other. It's about using this idea of moneyless world as a lens to examine our own relationship with money, to question the role it plays in our lives, in our values.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, this exploration into a world without money, where does it leave us? It seems like a world full of incredible trade-offs, maybe a slower pace of life, a world potentially with less technological advancement, but at the same time, a world possibly richer in community and purpose.
And that's the beauty of this thought experiment, isn't it? It reminds us that there isn't just one way to structure a society, one way to define progress, one way to find meaning in our lives. And even though a world without money might seem like a far-fetched idea, just thinking about it, grappling with the possibilities, it can open up our minds, challenge our assumptions, and maybe, just maybe, inspire us to create a better world.
It's certainly given all of us a lot to think about. And if this deep dive has sparked your own what-ifs about a world without money, we want to hear them. Share your thoughts, keep the conversation going in the comments. Until next time, keep exploring those fascinating possibilities.